Hey folks, welcome to the Inside Line F1 podcast. Soumil here. I'm the host of The Driving Force on Disney Plus Hotstar, joined by Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team. There's only one question on our minds today. There's only one question on our minds for the last 24 hours, and it's all just about how good was this race. Kunal, just how good was this race? I have been thinking so much about it, and there's no other thought that comes to my head. It's crazy that this is just what peak Formula One can look like. Two stalwarts of the game just fighting it out against each other using proper racing psychology. There's no ifs or buts to it. No stewards, no penalties, nothing like that. Just fun racing. This is what it should all be about.
It should be fun racing. Also, not too much about tire management, not too much about race strategy, although there were lots of things happening in the back, which we shall talk about. But what an opening week for Formula One, week and one day, because we had a double header, right? Such interesting narratives and stories coming out of Bahrain and now Saudi Arabia. And to me, Soumil, the race was, literally say 3 or 4 really highlight points, which we will look about. But maybe we should get talking about the start and the safety car period and the dummy that Ferrari threw and Red Bull caught up, because I thought Checo Perez had a fantastic start. I thought he was in control. I thought, wow, here's a race he's going to win on merit. Okay, because he got his pole on merit, which was a fantastic pole lap. He waited like 216 odd races to get his first pole position. But yeah, can you believe Red Bull Racing of all the teams fell for that dummy?
I mean, it's so crazy, right? They're the ones who often used to do it back in the day, where they used to have the pit crew coming out during the Sebastian Vettel times, and Ferrari used to always fall for it. The tide has changed so badly. But after that as well, Kunal, even when Perez fell off, we weren't short of any action at all, because the way these guys were able to follow, that was just outstanding. That I think all the way from the safety car to the very end, Verstappen and Leclerc were always just within a couple of seconds of each other, which, when you think about it, is such a major upgrade from last year.
It's such a major upgrade, Soumil, that literally every driver interview I heard after the race was, they were, even though they had a bad race. So, for example, let's take Daniel Ricciardo. Even though he had a really bad race, he had a retirement, and the only highlight of his race literally was that he had the fastest pit stop for the second race in succession, right? But he said, oh my God, wow, look at Leclerc, look at Verstappen. I can't believe that they can continue to fight for laps that end. He's like, I know we have the tools. I know these cars can race each other. I'll personally take a step forward, saying I know the tires supported the racing in Saudi Arabia. And drivers like, Ricciardo were saying, I can't wait to join the fight. I can't wait to have the tools to join that fight. And hats off to Formula One, hats off to FIA, hats off to people who actually believed in writing these regulations. Now I know it's only 2 races, a sample that we are looking at. It's a very short sample. It could be argued that high-speed circuit, DRS-enabled, safety car-enabled stuff. But the fact is, 2 drivers could go head-to-head in varied setups. That Ferrari and that Red Bull were differently set up. So again, I don't want to be the ones who will say, yeah, wow, these rules are working, but I can say whatever we've seen up until now, it's time we be more positive about what's going to come ahead for the season.
Yeah, and Leclerc and Verstappen as well, right? Give them a good car to battle and give them cars that can follow, and they will just paint a masterpiece, as they have done so many times before. And this was just another classic with the racing psychology of the DRS zone, which is crazy, right? Because in Formula One, you expect to be the person who wants to always be ahead. It's crazy right now that over here we've seen 2 consecutive races where the drivers don't want to be the one ahead up first. It's crazy that how the whole pehle up kind of philosophy that we have here in India has come up into the racing. But that joke aside, it's fun that Verstappen won on track, on merit, with that amazing pass at the very end. It was like a crescendo, right? It was building up for such a long time. Where do you think he actually won it, Kunal? Because pace-wise, the 2 of them seem so similar.
I think he won it down to his car setup. Not to say he won it down to his racing psychology, as you said, his ability to figure what Charles was doing and to react to it. And this is how I saw it, right? First part of the battle, when what we saw in Bahrain as well, where Charles was playing with Max, that started to happen in Saudi Arabia as well. Charles was braking earlier into the final corner, letting Max go, taking DRS. He was playing that game. And for once, I actually loved to watch Max Verstappen being played by a driver, because that's not usually we get to see that. Okay, so here's Max, who of course races very differently against a Charles compared to, say, a Lewis Hamilton. He was being played, and he realized, oh my God, I'm being played here. And then guess what? He played back. And it was what you said, Soumil. It was about, that whole psychology of Pehle aap, or ladies first, as they would say, or not literal translation, but it's saying, why don't you why don't you go first? That gentlemanliness, I would say, right? And that gave us such an exciting battle. And I think the one place where Max really won it was down to setup. The Red Bulls were set up with lower downforce, so they were like a rocket ship on the straights, and that's what Max probably knew as well. I need to just get ahead of Charles and then get that Red Bull powertrain unit to just give me the power that I need, and then my setup will aid me to just pull away, and that's exactly what happened. And that's what Charles was trying to not let Max go as well, because all along the weekend we knew that the Ferraris were faster in the corners, whereas the Red Bulls were quicker in the straights.
Yeah, and this sort of helps you to follow, right? Because if you know that your car is better in the straights, you just hope that you can stay along with the other car in the corners, which we've seen so often in MotoGP, because their bikes, they don't really have that wake problem. So you often end up seeing this between a Ducati and a Yamaha, where they just always, the Ducati's job is just to stay with the Yamaha on the corners, and then when the straight comes up, they just blast past. This is just a simple rule of racing. One car faster on the straights, one car faster on the corners. The recipe is always going to be fun. But we also saw something very similar like this with the Alpines, Kunal. And I know it's not in terms of the order of it, not the next thing we should ideally talk about, because Alpines finished way down and Alonso didn't really finish at all. But come on. That just kind of feeds into the whole argument that these cars can race. I mean, sometimes even cars that belong to the same team. That got too hairy for me.
It was too hairy. I can only imagine what Otmar was going through as well. I love it when,
They actually showed that, He was breaking his head, literally.
Yeah. And he's faced Ocon before. He was, at Ocon when he was a team principal at Racing Point and Force India when Ocon was racing there. He knows Ocon can be a tough teammate as well. We saw all those battles between Ocon and Perez when they came together. I'm glad they kept it clean. It was so good to see Fernando Alonso in the battle as well. The impression we all have is Alonso is like the best, the most complete driver, but Ocon is standing his guard as we speak, right? Of course, Alonso had the retirement in the race, but I loved the fact that they were able to fight. I think I mentioned the race was of 3 or 4 highlight points, and one of the highlight points was Alpine's battling, and then Bottas, and then Kevin Magnussen joining that battle as well. Because at that point of time, Perez was running away. The top 4 were just literally waiting to see what could happen. Like Christian Horner said post-race, Max was looking after his tires for attacking in the later half of the race, and that's exactly what happened. So in the first half, it was the midfield that was entertaining us, and I think they did a cracker of a job. I mean, there is so little to choose from them. There are almost 3 or 4 teams up there fighting all along Soumil. It was like every lap there were positions just changing.
And think of it, different cars, different design philosophies. They've all worked in the winter to just design something that's totally different. And still, they're all so closely bunched up between Haas, between Alfa Romeo, between, dare I say, Alpine and Mercedes as well now, considering Hamilton and his performances. But let's really talk about that, because that was a shocker, Kunal. I, for once, couldn't believe that this was the same Hamilton. And that lady who came on the F1 broadcast, who was kind of put on and made world famous, totally agree that expression just summed up everyone's expression. What was it? I suppose it has to be set up, right? Because Lewis Hamilton can't be that far back to Georgia. If it is, what kind of a shocker day has he had? I mean, what did he have for breakfast?
So,
maybe the wrong set of porridge. Maybe the porridge that Bottas kept up last night, but it wasn't quite fresh enough.
It was from Saudi Arabia last. This reminds me. I remember South Korea when Formula One teams went back the next year, the fridges still had the sandwiches from the year before, right? And it's a great time to bring out South Korea.
Me?
Yeah, that's what they found at that time, right? So the track was literally not accessed, not used whatsoever for that 1 year period. But anyway, this could be just hearsay or something. But this is a story I was told, so that's why I'm narrating it. Anyway, so talking of South Korea, the last time Lewis Hamilton scored just a single point, a solitary point from a Grand Prix on merit, was 2010 South Korean Grand Prix. This stat is, of course, courtesy F1 Stats Guru, which is Sundaram. He's fantastic with his stats. He also has turned up and said, this is Hamilton's worst start to a season ever. And, contrastingly, 2021 was the best start to Hamilton's season in Formula One ever. So that's it. That's the stats. Now, this is what, again, I picked up during the race broadcasts. Initially, when qualifying happened, Mercedes, of course, said on the F1 app that, neither of the drivers had too many different setups. In fact, the drivers were probably running very similar setups, is what they said. After qualifying, Toto Wolff turned around and said, we were trying something radical with Lewis's car and it did not work. And one doesn't know what the truth is, but, is this the team coming up and just backing the driver saying we tried something different? Or is it just that, Lewis had a bad day, which, everybody everybody can have a bad day, because if you guys remember in Bahrain qualifying, it was George Russell who had tried something radical at that time. And then he, of course, had a bad qualifying session as well. So truth be told, lots to dig, lots to unearth from Mercedes's package and Mercedes's design philosophy. And also, down to, is their power unit not up to the mark compared to the Alpines and even the Honda and the Ferrari power units? Because we had a drag race between Alpine and Lando Norris. So the Renault-powered Alpine of Esteban Ocon, and then the Mercedes-powered McLaren of Lando Norris on the final straight on the last lap. And Ocon actually pipped Lando Norris to that position. And, questions. This, of course, reminded me of when Pierre Gasly out-dragged Lewis Hamilton in Brazil a couple of years ago as well. So interesting times ahead. We've seen Charles and Max. They belong to the same generation. It would be one hell of a challenge for Formula One to try and see how Lewis can join that battle as well, because Lewis, always says, I want to show these young guns I still have it in me. And if we have a three-way fight, it would be epic, Soumil. And this goes to what you said, when we were preparing. There are actually 4 drivers capable of fighting for, race wins at this moment in the 2022 Formula One season.
Yeah, you're right. Because Sergio Perez, if you come to think of it, he didn't really have a bad day on his own, right? His performance was superb, especially on Saturday when you come to think of how many races it's been since he's actually taken pole position. That must be, say, over 200, because maybe sometime in his junior career. 215 is the exact number in F1, but there must be a few races before in his junior career as well. So ridiculous to see how that happened. But again, Perez had the pace. Carlos Sainz has always been there or thereabouts. So maybe we're just looking for him to just kind of step up to the next level. But it's fantastic that we have 4 cars, and it's fantastic in the midfield as well, that there are so many teams fighting and constantly just going head to head and putting up these amazing shows, just like the one that we discussed earlier on, like the final lap battle. But Mick Schumacher also, Kunal, let's just quickly mention him, because now that we've spoken about Saturday and Sergio Perez, great to see him fit, great to see him all right, and kind of fair that Haas decided not to race him, because, of course, they have to look for the long run, right? And Melbourne is going to be their focus. But otherwise, apart from Mick as well, there are so many other big stories. And reliability, I am just confused. Why did we see almost every car in the midfield fail in that, and also just within 5 minutes? We were all just shocked. There's 3 or 4 cars gone within a couple of minutes here and there.
Yeah, it was, every power unit manufacturer had one car failure at least. So I think Red Bull have decided either we have cars retire on the sighting lap or the reconnaissance lap of the race, or in the last couple of laps of the race. We cannot have cars retire in the middle of the race, right? Because that's what happened to poor Yuki Tsunoda, I would say. Then we saw Fernando Alonso have a problem, Valtteri Bottas have a problem, and then Daniel Ricciardo have a problem. So reliability is still a challenge. I'm glad that both the Red Bulls could finish the race. And, it's, of course, my heart just goes out to Checo Perez. I know we spoke about it before. I know we spoke about the dummy, but here's one piece of data which I'm digging with Sundaram. And the puzzling part of Perez's pit stop was, of course, first he had bad luck during the safety car, and you can't do anything about that. But the puzzling part is, and there are 2 points here. First is his lap times were not any drastically slower than his lap times before he pitted. So when you count 5 or 6 laps before he pitted, of course, there was a downward trend, but it wasn't a nosedive. In fact, Charles Leclerc similarly had slower laps as well. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, that it is Checo Perez. He's the master of tire management. Okay. And it just puzzles me that Red Bull, it seemed like they almost had no plan in place if Checo literally kept the lead and kept running the way he did and, lead the race on merit.
Yeah, but that's kind of strange to think about it, isn't it? Because we all know that Max is the primary main gun, but I thought that Red Bull would respond maybe a bit more proactively if that's the case, right? Because, of course, they did get kind of robbed in a way because of the safety car with Sergio Perez, that is. But I thought perhaps that maybe Sergio could do something different and do something else in the other part of the race. But that's strange to see how things have just piled up for him. But at least we know that he can race. And that is maybe a very, very encouraging sign all the way through, right? To see that this can potentially happen. And the way the race has shaped up, right, the safety car, and there's this running joke that's going around now about Nicholas Latifi and how he's just become the wild card in the world of Formula One. That whenever you need some sort of drama, just throw in a Nicholas Latifi crash. Kind of similar to what we saw in qualifying as well, didn't we? Because Q1 was getting slightly dull. Oh yeah, we want fun? Why don't we throw a Nicholas Latifi crash? I don't even know what's happening. He is not even fast, unfortunately, because of the Williams, but he's also being outclassed by his teammate, but also Messi. So, tough luck for him.
Did you just really say he's not fast, really, because of the Williams? Because
I was trying to keep it subtle.
Yeah, I realize. Ralph Schumacher said Lance Stroll is like a hobby driver. He should go pick another hobby. Maybe there should be another driver that, we should add to that list as well, which would be Nicholas Latifi. Again, the number of miles he's had in the Formula One car, in test and now in race trim as well, just doesn't do any merit to what he's able to pull out as results, right? And yes, he's become a meme now that if you want Max Verstappen to win the race under a safety car on the final lap of the race or something, just get Nicholas Latifi to do some of his off-track antics. But no, on a serious note, it just seems that he ran out of talent. I know you're being subtle, and I know I'm not. But that's also the amount of airtime I'd like to give Latifi on our show. I think we should just move on. Thank you for the entertainment, but oh my God, what are you doing with that opportunity you've got, my friend?
Okay, let's do something similar to another similar driver, Lance Stroll, Kunal. I know you were very interested in discussing this point, but he got beaten by Nico Hülkenberg again. It's not like it's a surprise, but come on.
Can you believe it? In Bahrain, I think Hülkenberg beat him in qualifying, and in Saudi Arabia, Hülkenberg beat him in the race. And this, mind you, of course, the safety car that came out at such a bad time that drivers like Hülkenberg and I think it was also Lewis Hamilton, the ones who started on the hards, actually got done in because, they just didn't end up fitting during the safety car period while others did.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's the point is Hülkenberg actually said, I had a clean race. I'm happy with what happened, even though he didn't score a point, because, races like these keep showing why he should be in Formula One.
Exactly. And the thing with him is you never know when it's going to be the last race, right? And that's going to be a bit of a stinger. Who knows? He might just come back. But yeah, if this is the last performance, kind of representative, right? That he ended up beating someone with barely any practice. So that's just the talent of the man, all things considered. But otherwise as well in the midfield canal, Pierre Gasly apparently was having a very, 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 very bad day. No? I mean, I just realized now before recording when he told me that he had some intestinal, if that's even a thing, issues with his intestine. And that's not like the intestine of the car. That's like his own intestine. That's just scary to think about it.
Yeah, he actually said the toughest race of his career yet, because, last 10, 12 laps, he had some pain in his intestines, is what he said. And then he was just holding on to sort of make sure he gets through to the finish. So hats off to him for pulling through that one as well. I'm sure this race is also physically very tough on the drivers. The walls are closed, it's high speed, and so on. So it's good that, because I still remember Charles Leclerc last year said, I feel dizzy. This is what he said some point of time through the middle of the race. But the good thing is that at least we know that it didn't lead to anything major, and that he was sort of okay when things came calling towards the checkered flag, Soumil.
Yeah, exactly. That could have been scary, right? I mean, imagine if you've got so much of pain and you end up crashing and all that stuff. That's not very good to think about. But finally, Kunal, we have to discuss this one really crazy thing as well. Hamilton finishing P10. I don't know. I still can't digest it properly because of all that happened eventually. I think he really didn't say, is there even a point for P10, didn't he? Or something along those lines, right?
He actually said, is there even a point that we get for finishing P10? Which I know he was being sarcastic, but I think that's a little too harsh with what happened, with Mercedes, because all things said and done, if George Russell could finish best of the rest, I'm sure Hamilton could have done that at least, or a little more. And, Mercedes are off the pace. They finished 30 seconds down on the lead pair, about 20 seconds ahead of the next best. So there's, again, in that whole Red Bull area where Red Bull was a few years ago when Ferrari and Mercedes were sort of fighting, I would say. So a little unfortunate that, they're down where they are. But Lewis's message was definitely, it seemed to me, more than sarcasm, it seemed a little brutal, little too blunt, I would say.